It's hard to find.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, I guess we're good to go. Volume's a little loud there, Anthony, but that's okay. Morning to you guys that are all here this morning.
Morning.
We'll just go over. They had another loss in their family. Ray Garcia's cousin as well, Joshua Cordova. Mark, does anybody know if Mark's back yet? Okay. He may or may not be here today. He's been in Oklahoma with the passing of his brother-in-law. Haskell's still in the hospital, having issues with breathing and a few things like that. So we need to keep him in mind. For those that remember Rocky and Maryland,
Yes.
they moved to Nevada. Well, her son got in a bad car accident yesterday. So he's laid up in the hospital with some broken bones and a few other things like that. So keep them in mind. Okay. Today, hopefully, we're going to finish up James chapter 5. And we're going to start with verse 7 and go through 20, the end of 20. We'll start with verses 7 and 8. Who wants to read first? If not, I'll rush out. How about you, Jim? Feel like reading? Okay, and then Roy, when the time comes in just a little bit, Psalms 40, verse 1. Psalm 40, verse 1.
Psalms 40, verse 1.
And then that lady next to you, if she could stay in Psalms 130, verse 5. Okay? All right, Jim, go ahead and start us off with verse 7 and 8, please.
Be patient, then, brothers, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer falls for the land, yields
Okay. Did you lose your place there? Okay. Okay.
You to be patient and stand firm, because the Lord is coming. Lord's coming is near.
Okay. So what can we gather from that? Just a
The farming and Christians is, farmer has a pretty good idea what the growing season is, you know, but sometimes that's still a long wait. Because you don't know if you're going to get a bad crop or a good one, depending on elements and all that stuff. Christian, don't know when he's coming back. It might be in the next minute or two. Maybe in the next year or two.
that brings up a whole other lesson series about preparation, about being prepared.
Right, but he is coming back, but you just, you know, be patient doesn't mean sit back with your hands folded and do nothing until that happens.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, you have to have the right mindset going through it, but do the other things you've got to do.
Yeah, that's a key word I got there is patience. Roy, it sounded like you were going to say something.
Okay, Psalms 1.
No.
Well, not yet. We're still commenting on verses 7 and 8.
Right.
Oh, on verse 7 and 8.
Yeah, it sounded like you had a comment.
Okay.
Now we did
It's obvious that the harvest is coming. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, the signs are all about us. I mean,
could be
as
now.
the suicide rates go up, all the horror coming up, people are gonna be looking somewhere. And guess what? They might as well look here as anywhere else.
Yeah, but my take on that is, where you say they might as well look here, you know, to the church. Well, you don't do that at the last minute.
No,
You're not
but we gotta
supposed
be
to.
bright,
You
you
know,
know,
you gotta-
shining light that when this darkness comes.
We gotta be prepared whenever, because what David said could be, the next 10 minutes,
The
Exactly.
next second.
could be tonight, could be, 10 years from now, you know? You know, and every now and then I keep referring back to James 4:14, where we're only here for a little bit.
Be vapor.
You know, it's just like during this time of the year when you breathe out, you can see that little mist.
Vapor.
It's there for a couple of seconds and then it dissipates, it's gone. So we don't know when the time is coming. Anthony?
So, you know, we take back onto the farmer versus the tree. The farming culture, even older cultures, knew to put away. There will be hard times. Their whole cycle is about getting ready for when they won't have,
Mhm.
because that will happen.
Mhm.
We're losing that now. We want everything now, and if it's not there tomorrow, let's worry about that tomorrow.
Well, going along with the patience thing, there's a whole group of people that are just impatient. You know, they don't want to, like what David said, there's a certain sequence of things, you know. You got to make sure your land is good. You do the plowing. Okay, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
You plow,
You tell the city people, huh?
pretty much. You know, you got to do your plowing, do your planting. And there's things that go along with it, you know. You got to make sure you fertilize and things like that. Water the seeds. You know, there's a process, like you said. And, you know, the farmer just doesn't plant the seed and then sit down in his rocking chair and have his moonshine. You know, okay, well, if it grows, it grows. If it don't, it don't. You know,
What kind of farmers do you know?
pet the dog.
Yeah, it's a little off.
Oh, okay. Is it something else besides moonshine?
Well, there's a lot of farmers.
Okay, tea. How about that? Iced tea, cold tea.
There you go.
You know, and then later on down the road, there comes the harvest. You know, generally you can plan on it. You know, I'm not. The nearest I come to farming is going down to the Sprouts and getting my fruits and vegetables. But
Amen.
you know, you get some things there. Your crop, whatever it is you're planting, comes along. Okay, it may be 6 weeks, could be 9 weeks, but give or take, you can more or less plan on it coming. Now, but then again, it may not. You don't know. You don't know. You can do all the things you're supposed to do, and you get no harvest at all, or else it's a slight harvest, not what you were anticipating. But there's no doubt that the Lord's coming back. There's no doubt at all. We just don't know when. Yes, David.
One of the things that we tend to do when there's an illustration like that is weed out, what is it, farming term? We tend to pull out every little detail, make it mean something, and the point is, look what the farmer does, just as a general rule. And, you know, we shouldn't look at all the other stuff, but just in general, what he does, the Lord is coming back, all you can do is what you're supposed to do,
Yeah,
and that takes care of it.
yeah, it should. And you just got to have that faith and that, you know that it is coming. One day it is coming. Okay. Any other comments on that? No? Okay, Roy, enlighten us with Psalms 40, verse 1.
And you said that.
Oh, did I wake you up?
Well, I said Psalms, I had Psalm 30,
No, 40.
40 verse 1. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry.
Okay. You expound on that a little bit?
Well, it's you know, when you think you're being patient, especially most of us, we think we're being patient. But when we're, if you incline, you lean towards the Lord, He make you cry to the Lord, He's going to comfort you. He's going to be there. He's already guaranteed you that. He's not going to leave you hanging,
Okay.
basically.
I like the second part of it personally. It says, He turned to me and heard my cry. Now, that could have a variety of different meanings.
Exactly. I mean,
You know.
us is inclined to me, but turned to me, came to me. In other words, He's going to hear you cry.
Yeah. Now, too, to go along with that, the response you get is sometimes can be different for everybody. You know, depending on your belief system, your faith, your lifestyle, things like that. You know, He can hear your cry, but He's going to respond to it. You know, just like when your kids are small. You know, I always use the correlation of the Father down here and the Heavenly Father. Just because one of your kids, when they're 3, 4, 5 years old, you know, for lack of a better term, go crying to you for whatever, you hear it, but how are you going to react to it? You know, you're going to give him that big, giant-sized Snickers bar because he wants it? You know?
But don't you know those different cries from your child?
There is.
Don't
Oh,
you
yeah.
need to acknowledge it?
Oh, yeah.
You can hear a child. You could, when your child's growing up, you could hear in the backyard crying. You could tell who started it, couldn't you?
Most of the time.
Yeah, the thing I when I hear that verse is that He's not going to hear you cry if you don't cry.
Okay, that's fair.
If you don't ask,
That's
how do you
fair.
expect? How do you come back?
That's fair. And also, just to touch real quick with what Roy said, when our kids were small, you know, their bedrooms were down the hallway, and you could hear a little whimper, a little whatever, and you really don't pay it too much mind. But when you have that little variation of like, whoa, wait a minute, something's not right, as slight as it is, you know, you can barely hear it. And, you know, you gotta go see what's going on, you know?
That's how it comes to us.
Because I sleep like a rock, but when my kids were small, each one, when they made a slight noise that I felt was not right, I would wake up like that, you know? I mean, they could be in there throwing toys on the floor and kicking the bed and all this, making all this racket. Okay, well, that's just them. But when something is out of whack, just that tiny bit, I don't know. I don't know if it's just me or if anybody else has gone through that, but you have a tendency to key on that. And like what Anthony said, you gotta make the noise to get heard, basically.
Squeaky wheel.
Actually, you have to make the right
I don't know about squeaky wheels.
Yeah.
Those wagon wheels
Yeah, the old wagon.
from back in the day.
Not necessarily.
Okay. And then 130, verse 5.
I wait for the Lord, my soul doth wait, and in His word do I hope.
Okay. So these are basically just reinforcements of everything else we've been talking about. I mean, does anybody else have a comment or want to have some input on that before we move on? Nobody? Okay. Now we'll go to verse 9. Alan, do you mind?
Verse 9?
James 5, verse 9?
Oh,
Just verse 9?
Yeah, only.
Do not grumble against one another, brothers, so that you may not be judged. Behold, the judge is standing at the door.
Okay. What do we glean from that?
Be quiet.
Okay. That's, is that the NIV you're reading from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's the one thing that you can always be sure of is people are going to measure you by the words that you use and what you say.
Yeah, we lesson series not too long ago about the tongue. Tongue can do great things. Little bitty part of your body. I mean, look at these people that are, for those that like it, the opera singers. Personally, I don't care for it, but it's just a bunch of noise to me. But anyway, you know, and that's made with their tongue and their voice, of course.
Comes from within.
Okay. And then you have the tongue is just like compared to the rudder of a ship. It's a small, tiny little thing, but look what it can do. Same thing with your tongue. You can do a lot of good with it. You can do a lot of bad with it. And once something comes out of your mouth, good or bad, or more bad, it's real hard, almost impossible to take it back, Dave.
One of the things that James is getting to, and he's already touched on it back in chapter 4, verse 11 and 12, you spend your time criticizing your brother or your sister. You know, we've got folks who, I've said they kind of act like their gift of the Spirit is to be critics in the church.
Mm-hmm.
They're always finding negative things. They never look for positive. They don't encourage. They don't build up. And there's enough going on in the circumstances around us that tear us down. We don't need to be kind of helping that out, helping it along by criticizing one another.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, don't go to the other extreme, meaning I should never say anything. You know, bad behavior and things, it needs to be addressed, but you can even wail on that and criticize and you help, you encourage, you build up in any way that you can. Tearing down produces nothing.
When our kids were smaller, I would make reference once in a great while to Thumper. Does everybody know who Thumper is? From Bambi. What does he say? Can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. And even to this day, they remember that. You know? And, you know, they argue about silly little things. Well, you can't say anything nice, then don't say anything. You know? It's like what Dave says, we spend way too much time criticizing each other. But we're not called to do that. We're here to hold each other up, to reinforce different things for different people. I mean, you can be critical of anybody at any time, regardless of who it is, but we're not to pursue it that direction. And what good does it do? You know, nothing's really changed, or it could change for the good, but
You made me think of the idea that, you know, we're here to help one another get to heaven, not find reasons why we should be left behind.
or going along that line of thinking you climb over somebody,
Right.
put them behind you,
And make sure I get
and
there.
say, hey, wait a minute, the line's back there.
Yeah.
You know, just like the new Christian, you know, I did a lesson not too long ago, that here we have, and I'm going to use Jim as an example, only because of his age. Okay, great guy, love him to death, but Jim's been in the church with the body, let's say 50 years, 60 years at least, Jim? If not more? Okay, 65 years since he was 15 or 16. Now, we get a young person that's just been exposed to the Word, was totally ignorant of it for a long time until somebody opened his eyes. And we've all been there at one point or another. Somebody taught us, somebody exposed us to it. Now, let's say this person that's 20, 25 years old gets exposed to it and say, okay, what I've been doing hasn't been the right thing. I'm going to start doing this. I'm going to follow Christ. Now, is he less deserving of the benefits than Jim? I mean, there's a big age gap there. But just because he's new to it, and he's a lot younger, he's entitled to the benefits just as equal, I would say. Unless somebody has a different comment or a different viewpoint on it. Well, am I off base there? Martin, I can hear it.
Oh, well, what I was going for was, first we gotta realize that God does not live in time. God lives outside of time, space, and matter. God's not confined by time, space, and matter.
No constraints.
Okay, so he has no constraint over time. So, there was, what I'm getting is, what maybe this fresh guy has put in is still as much time as the time that he's got now.
Okay, is the younger
The
person,
usefulness of
the newer Christian, is he less deserving of
That's what I mean.
Of being
No,
saved?
he's still as much, God died for him, the young guy, as much as he died for the old guy.
true? But there's some people that say, hey, well, wait a minute. I've been doing this and this and this for 40 years, 50 years. And here we got this guy that just came along. And let's say they both died at the same time. You know, we shouldn't think that way.
No, because what I've done for God, I mean, it's like filthy rags. It means nothing.
You know, that whole idea is through the Bible. In the Old Testament, there was an incident with David and his men where David took some of them and went into a battle, and some of the others stayed behind to watch the gear. And when they came back, the spoils of the battle, David divided up equally between all of them.
Exactly.
And some of the guys who went into battle said, hey, you know, they didn't go in, we did more than they did. And he said, not the point, he's still valuable. In the New Testament, Jesus told a parable about a man who wanted to hire some workers in his vineyard.
Yeah.
And some of them went out, and some of the others, well, okay, at the last hour of the day, they said, you know what, we'll go out and work too. And they said, they don't deserve as much pay as we do.
Yeah.
And
I did a
he'll
watch
also
on it.
give what he wants to whom he wants.
Exactly. Am I reading? Okay, Anthony.
Okay, not a challenge, but there's 2 points there, right? There's the concept, like Troy was talking about. I have to relate to the guy in science. Fundamentally, that's why I interpret it. So the idea that Anthony thought humanity doesn't have time, space, it's not constrained by it. So we try to apply to that. Everything has to have an order. It's in a line. It's synchronous. It may be asynchronous. So it's happening at the same time. It always has to happen. We get it in line. That's why the person in first goes in first, and the last person. So we have to put it into that. So in one regard, like, you can follow the concept of without that, you're all part of it. So you're all part of it and become part of that. And the second part is where I have a little bit of a problem. As we live along the world as we have it, there is an idea of fairness. I work 8 hours. I work 2 hours. Why do I get paid? Why does the person get paid for 2 hours get as much as paid? So that's that delta. I have trouble reconciling. This is not a point.
Go ahead, I'm calling on you.
Oh, you're so far away. I just,
Are your eyes that bad?
they really in answer or response to fairness, you know, my question would be, how many of us here want to be treated fair?
Oh, no.
And who are we to decide what's fair?
Okay. Now the question is, do you want to be treated fair when it comes to your sin?
That's what I'm saying, no.
Nobody who goes to court who's done something wrong wants to be treated fair.
Correct.
They want
Forgiveness.
mercy.
Mercy.
That's what they do. Why do you think the majority of our legal system is based off of plea bargaining? Right? They want mercy in some way, no matter who it is.
Yeah, how about that?
Now, the only time you want justice is when you are what?
Innocent.
When you are innocent. No one in this room is innocent, right? Says we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. So when it comes to fairness, and I understand what Anthony's saying as far as, hey, I worked this job 8 hours and this person works 2, and yet we have a whole system designed to benefit the person that works 2 and come down harder on the person who works 8, right? That's why we have tax laws that are actually harder on self-employed people than others. But anyways, but when it comes to sin, none of us want to be judged fairly. Because if we are judged fairly, then we've been weighed, we've been measured, we've been found wanting.
Exactly.
What we want is grace and mercy. And that's an illustration of the workers in the field. You know, they may have come late, but they're still going to receive God's grace and His mercy, just the same as the person who's labored, you know, like Jim for 80-some years.
65,
Well, he was being nice.
Well, the laborers, they usually hire by the day.
Yeah, they got paid
And,
at the end of the day.
And that's what they receive. I mean, so it wouldn't make any difference if they work 8 hours or 2 hours, they get paid. the same
Well, it's up
amount.
to the guy that owns the
Well,
field.
yeah, no, it's
You
fine.
know, you made an agreement at 7 in the morning to work for X amount of dollars. You agreed to that. We both agreed to that. Okay. The day goes on.
Yeah.
Guy realizes, hey, I need some more people here. Well, at the end of the day, it's going to be 2 hours, 3 hours from now. You and I agree on this certain wage. Okay. What have you hurt the first guy? It's what he agreed to. But, you know,
And that's-
what Anthony
that's
uses
contract,
is the
and
word,
usually
is-
on a handshake.
is being fair.
Yeah.
Well, that's not fair. Well, wait a minute, didn't we agree? Yeah. But I worked, 9 hours more.
Yeah.
I deserve more. Just like saying, you got a righteous Christian man that's, been in the faith for 80 years. I mean, it kind of maybe could be a natural tendency to think, hey, I deserve a little bit more. But if you're in the right frame of mind, it's like, you should be happy for the young person. Can you read? How about Matthew chapter 7, verses 1 through 5? Matthew 7, 1 through 5.
Nine?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Do not judge, lest you be judged yourself. For in the way you judge, you will be judged. And by your standard of measure, it shall be measured to you. And why do you look at the speck of the speck in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, and behold, the log is in your own eye? You hypocrite, first take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly enough to take the speck out of your brother's eye. Do not give what is holy to dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn and tear them to pieces. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be opened. For what man is there among you, when his son shall ask him for a loaf, will give him a stone? Is that all right?
Well, I wanted you to stop at 5.
Okay.
But that's okay.
Hey,
That's good.
So what do we get from that? I mean, it pretty much explains itself. But if anybody has a comment they want to expound on. David? Yes.
Well, again, that's one of those passages we like to go to extremes with, and we want to exclude any kind of judgments. That's not what he's saying. Don't use yourself as a standard. And similar to what we've been talking about in James, we kind of like to look at things from our point of view, or even from a democratic point of view, rather than God's point of view. He's got something different in mind. God's the judge. You can make judgments based upon His word. Just don't make yourself a standard.
Kind of like, do as I say, not as I do. That's the other side of the flip side of the coin.
Yeah, do as God says, not as I do.
I mean, we only have one judge, whether we want to go there or not, I mean, that's not to say we can't make judgment every now and then about certain things, One of the examples I use, and it's probably wrong, is that, let's say we're back 2001. Everybody knows what happened in September. Now, let's say you're going on a business trip or you're going on a vacation with your family. You're at the airport. You're getting ready. You're in line, getting ready to check in, and you see some obvious Middle Eastern-looking type people also waiting in line. One of them has a backpack. One of them has a small suitcase. One of them has a duffel bag. What is probably the first thing that's going to go through your mind?
But it depends, knowing what we know now,
No. Well, yeah.
back then,
Now
I
that-
didn't think anything about it.
Now that is, entirely wrong. I mean, but you can't help but think that in the back of your mind. I'll be the first one to admit it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, wait a minute, maybe I can take another flight.
I had to go on flying here that time.
Maybe I can drive.
It's hectic.
Just like in my line of work, I'd be,
Yeah.
one or two of my friends and I would be eating at an establishment. We're sitting there. And then we're there 5 minutes, and then I see 3 or 4 Hispanic guys come in, young guys, wearing the bandana, pants down to here, tattoos everywhere. Yeah, I'm going to look at him a little bit, with a little bit more scrutiny while I meet him and say, hey, I got to keep an eye on these guys. Now, I know some people that have that appearance just because they want to fit in, I guess, so to speak. Great guys, not involved in anything to do with games, but they like that look. And I've talked to them, I said, look, you're drawing attention to yourself, negative attention. I know you personally since you were this big, and I know you're not that type of person. But everybody else that sees it, you can't help but think that, especially in my line of work. And is it wrong? Yeah, it's wrong, but in the back of your mind, you're still going to, hey, I need to keep an eye on these 2 guys,
It's not so much wrong to think that, it's when you start acting
That's
on
how you react to it, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? Lady back there, can you read now? I want you to read Romans chapter 2, verses 1 through 3.
Right now?
Well, give everybody 30 seconds to...
Okay.
I got one more verse. Oh, you want to read the next one?
I will read the next one, but I had a question.
Okay.
Where are we actually in James?
Chapter 5, we're going through verse 9,
Okay, thank you.
talking about judgment a little bit. Yeah, we kind of got off the track a little. We kind of bent it a little bit. Okay, Raymond, you can read the last one. Titus 3, verse 3, when we get to it. But for right now, we're going to read Romans 2, 1 through 3.
Therefore, you have no excuse, you foolish person, every one of you who passes judgment, for in that matter in which you judge someone else, you condemn yourself. For you who judge practice the same things. And we know that the judgment of God rightly falls upon those who practice such things. But do you suppose this, you foolish person, who passes judgment on those who practice such things, and yet does them as well, that you will escape the judgment of God?
Now, what translation is yours?
New American Standard.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty strong word there, foolish, referring to a fool. Yeah, it's a strong word in the biblical sense.
Very strong word, very strong biblical.
You know. I
That's
mean,
why we shouldn't really walk around calling people fools.
I know.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I know a few.
Just
Strong word.
I'll be
Very
honest.
strong word.
I'll be honest, I know a few. More than one, let me put it that way. But they acknowledge it. Okay, any comments on that? What we just read? It's like the spec thing in the log. Hey, don't criticize me if you're doing the same thing. Dave?
One of the things that comes out of that section, he's talking to the Jews or the moralist who says, I've got my standard that I go by. You're doing this and it goes against my standard. problem with that is we all draw a line at what's acceptable, what's not acceptable in behavior things. I remember Richard Rogers talking about preaching on sin, and he said, you know, that murder's a sin. And there was one lady who said, "That's right, brother," and he said, "Well, and adultery's a sin." "That's right." And he went down some of the really heinous things we tend to think of. And he said, "And gossip's a sin," and she said, "Uh-huh." And we draw a line at what, you know, we won't do these things above the line, but what's below the line, that's acceptable for us.
Well,
And
that's like,
we don't realize there's a,
that's like telling, it's just a little lie.
yeah,
I just fibbed a little bit.
and a lie's a lie's
Well,
a
you know,
lie.
sin is sin regardless.
Yeah.
It's a big one or a little one. Well, I wasn't really that bad. Look what so-and-so was doing.
And then we try to justify,
Yeah.
well, the reason I did it doesn't matter, it's still wrong.
Yeah. Just like there was a guy, he was a fire captain many, many years ago at our other congregation. And he brought up the example about people jumping to conclusions. And he used me and himself as a reference point. Let's say we're going down in the downtown part of the town we were working in, and we're going into this barn, nightclub or whatever it is, one of those kind of establishments. And a couple of people from the church were on their way to lunch, drove by and saw us walk in there. It's like, you know, pretty soon you got 20 people, you know, "Hey, guess who we saw going into the club over here?" And what I was with him there for is to do a fire inspection. But they didn't know that. They just saw us going through to this bar. "Hey, ooh," you know, and they're right away, they're pointing fingers.
Ours usually,
That's guilt by association. They just automatically assumed, which is the emphasis word, that you were going in there to drink or whatever.
Yeah.
They didn't think of what your job was, or there could be job related. They just jumped to conclusions.
our criticisms tend to be around church-related items like it's been popular or a thing for folks to do the last decade or so about when you're singing, they'll raise their hands. It's not something I particularly do, but others do it. But for me to criticize them and say that's wrong, you know, I have no business doing that. I don't know their heart well enough to, you know, to understand why they're, and it's not anything that violates God's word. It just goes against a tradition we have.
Well, and to them, maybe they think they emphasize it more that way.
Exactly.
Just like when we pray, get it on your knees.
Right, and that's fine. That's
If you want to do that right here, there's nothing wrong with that.
That's
But
right.
to the person that's doing it, it's more of an emphasis. You know, so right or wrong, no, you make your own call.
It's like toe ball and Fiddler on the Roof tradition.
Okay. Verses 10 and 11. As an example, brethren, of suffering and patience, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. We count those blessed who endured. You have heard of the endurance of Job and have seen the outcome of the Lord's dealings. But the Lord is full of compassion and is merciful. That's pretty much self-explanatory. And then go down to 12. But above all, my brethren, do not swear, either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath, but your yes is yes and your no is no, so that you may not fall under judgment. So,
I wanted to go back to the word patience there as he's using Job. The word in the Greek means to hold up under. And when you think about Job and all that he was suffering, just boom, 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 things kept coming. But he held up under. I think of us now in the pandemic situation, you know, we're getting ready to close down again starting tomorrow. And, you know, patience kind of wears thin a little bit. And as far as the circumstances, I think he says, you know, hold up under that. Just look to God and trust God and do what God wants you to do. And it's one of those things where I preach better than I live at times. But I've got to remind myself of that too.
well, I think it's one of those things I hear every now and then. Don't preach me a sermon, show me a sermon. A person can say, you don't know what's in here. You know, you can want to say all the right things in front of 100 people, but it's what they see. It shows more emphasis. Okay. And then to go on that part about let your yes be yes and your no be no. If you're truthful, the truth doesn't change at all. If something was true yesterday, it should be true tomorrow. You know, just like God's word. They want to, you hear people say, or at least I do from time to time, well, we need to change with the times. That's old-fashioned, you know. Well, I'm gonna live with this guy or this girl. It's okay, you know. There's nothing wrong with it, you know. And I've had not an argument, but a strong discussion, shall we say, with different relatives that think it's okay. Well, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? You know, it's okay.
We Michael, Wayne usually watches these comments, and so we have folks watching online. And there was a comment about, and I missed it, if anybody can recall it, about the phrase coming is at hand. And then another comment was made, we were talking about judging, reference to passages that everybody goes to about judging. The comment is, the passage still teaches you are to judge, just not critically. Yeah, so I apologize because one of our deacons usually monitors the comments.
Well, even even Jesus has judgment. So there you go. Most of the time it's wrong and it's done incorrectly, but there comes a time every once in a while that we should. And actually, we're required to do that. But just to finish real quick on the yes and yes and the no and talking about the truth, I personally boil it down to a person's integrity. I mean, where's your integrity at? You know, when you see something that's obviously wrong somewhere, especially in a public manner, and you don't say anything about it, well then, as far as I'm concerned, from my perspective, you're condoning whatever behavior that is. You know, but because some things have become so commonplace, you get desensitized to it, and it's okay. You know, as long as it doesn't affect me, it's okay. You know. Now, back in the day as well, when two men had an agreement on something or agreed for something, they would exchange words and do this. You know, your handshake and your word. Okay, I'm good with that. Bond. Your word is your bond. Bond. Let's shake on it. So they shake, and that was that. Now you need a 12-page contract and everything else.
They also gave a sample.
They what?
They gave a sample, on one of their samples when they made it through.
That must have been before my time.
I know I've read it.
Okay, I thought you were talking from personal experience.
Oh, no.
Okay, so that just boils down to, what's your word worth? Is it worth anything? Do you say you're going to do something or say something, and then, okay, well, whatever. You know, life goes on. You know, back in the day, I use that phrase too much back in the day, but you know, your word meant something. Your word was important. Now it's like I said, everybody wants a 12-page contract for whatever, you know. And that's, I don't know how it got evolved to that. Personally, I don't like it, you know. If I tell, you know, Alan, well, he already said he wouldn't call me for any help, but if Alan needed a hand with something, and I say, okay, yeah, I'll be there, you know, this afternoon at 3 o'clock, and I don't show up, and I don't even bother to call him, let him know I'm not going. Well, if I'm going to say something to somebody, especially to be helpful in some way, I'm gonna do it. You know, not get back to all of them 3 days later and say, oh man, you know what, I really forgot. You know, the game was on and I had food on the stove and I just forgot all about you. You know, but, you know, and to me it just boils down to having some integrity. What's your word worth? You know, I mean, does anybody want to make a last comment on that? No, your word has to be worth something.
Yeah, you have to realize also, there's people who go to judge you no matter what you know, I mean,
Oh,
let
exactly
let
right.
your yea be yea and your nay be nay, right? That's basic integrity. If you're gonna do something, if you say you're gonna do something, do it. If you say you're not gonna do something,
I mean, that's.
you're probably gonna get judged for it.
I mean, that's
So-
yeah. Well, look at that guy. He said this and told me that, and you know, instead I go to the mall and he's over there playing pool or whatever. You know, having a soda or having lunch somewhere.
So
You know?
that makes it that they don't show up, or they committed and they don't call, they don't show up, then they're not necessarily going to be looked upon the next time an event or they're needed, because they're not dependable.
Yeah. Well, that's another word to go with integrity is
Right.
your commitment level.
We were taught by my father that if you give your word to someone, it's as good as you signed the paper.
Yeah.
And you follow through with that. Same
And that's,
thing.
you
Your
know,
word is your word.
and
It's
those
all
of
you
us
have.
of some of our different ages, and we got some youngsters over here, but you know, those of us who've been around a while, we grew up with that concept. We were taught that concept. Hey, your word is your bond. You know, you don't break it. You know, regardless. Now you can get released from it by the other party, but that's not you doing that. You have that integrity, you make that commitment, then, you know, you should follow through with it. Any last closing comments? Because my time's just about up. I was hoping to,
We're still gonna stay around into the judgment areas, or we're gonna mostly on past the judgment areas?
okay, we're gonna finish up next week. Michael was supposed to start a series on the Holy Spirit, but I'm gonna push him off another week. I'm gonna finish up James. Because the last couple of 13 through 18 are pretty important passages, along with 19 and 20. So we'll finish those up next week. Okay, any last comments, any last questions? Dave? No?